Welcome to the Survival Historian, where the brutal realities of the past meet the skills that keep us alive. Today, we're stepping into a world where there are no ambulances screaming across the battlefield, no sterile operating rooms waiting just behind the lines, and, honestly, no guarantee that help will arrive before you bleed out in the mud. This is the story of field medicine at its most desperate and most ingenious, where soldiers became their own surgeons, pharmacists, and last hope for survival. Forget the sanitized versions you've seen in films. What we're exploring today is raw, it's real, and, it might just save your life in a modern crisis. This is field medicine in the front lines. Picture a soldier in the trenches of the First World War. His uniform soaked through with freezing water, rats scurrying past his boots and the constant thunder of artillery shaking the earth. Suddenly shrapnel tears through his leg. There's no medic nearby. They're overwhelmed. 3 dugouts down. The nearest aid station is hundreds of yards away across open ground swept by machine gun fire. In this moment, survival depends entirely on what this soldier knows and what he carries in his personal kit. Before the 20th century revolutionized battlefield medicine with dedicated medical corps and evacuation systems, soldiers faced a stark reality. You either treated yourself or you died. Even with the advances of World War I and II, the fundamental challenge remained unchanged for those critical first minutes after injury. The soldier was his own first responder, and the contents of his first field dressing pouch represented the thin line between survival and becoming another casualty statistic. The greatest killer on battlefields throughout history wasn't the initial wound, it was what came after. Infection claimed more lives than bullets for thousands of years, and even into the 20th century, before antibiotics became widely available during World War II, a simple scratch could become a death sentence. Soldiers understood this instinctively, even if they didn't grasp the microbiology behind it. They knew that dirty wounds festered, that festering wounds turned gangrenous, and that gangrene meant amputation or death. When a soldier was hit, his first action after seeking cover was to tear open his field dressing. The wound had to be cleaned, but water on the battlefield was invariably contaminated, from corpses, latrines, and the general filth of war. Instead, soldiers turned to substances with natural antiseptic properties. Diluted vinegar was a battlefield staple stretching back centuries, its acidity creating an environment hostile to bacteria. Wine served the same purpose when available, which explains why military surgeons throughout history requisitioned alcohol not just for courage, but for sterilization. By World War I, medical science had developed Dakin's solution, a sodium hypochlorite mixture that revolutionized wound care in the trenches. Soldiers learned to irrigate wounds with this solution when they could access it, though its availability fluctuated wildly. Boric acid served as another cleaning agent, gentler but effective. The process was agonizing. Pouring any liquid into torn flesh sent jolts of pain that could induce shock, but soldiers learned to brace themselves, bite down on leather straps or rolled cloth, and do what needed doing. For wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, the ancient practice of cauterization remained a brutal necessity. A heated blade pressed against torn blood vessels to seal them through burning. The sizzle of flesh and the smell of burning tissue were sensory memories that haunted survivors forever. When cauterization wasn't enough, particularly for catastrophically damaged limbs, amputation became the only option. Soldiers sometimes performed these procedures on themselves or their comrades, using whatever blades were available, creating tourniquets from belts or torn uniform strips, and praying they could cut cleanly and quickly enough. The most desperate improvisation involved materials that seemed absurd but occasionally worked. Cobwebs stretched across wounds actually contain properties that promote clotting. Soldiers in remote positions sometimes packed wounds with them when nothing else was available. In earlier eras, allowing maggots to infest wounds was observed to sometimes prevent the spread of gangrene. The larvae consumed dead, necrotic tissue, while leaving living flesh intact. This practice seemed barbaric, but was rediscovered by modern medicine as maggot debridement therapy. Long before pharmaceutical companies synthesized medicines, soldiers relied on botanical knowledge passed down through generations. Roman legionaries benefited from one of history's most sophisticated military medical systems, with physicians who understood anatomy and maintained detailed knowledge of medicinal plants. Willow bark, containing the natural compounds that would eventually be synthesized into aspirin, was chewed or brewed into tea to manage pain and reduce inflammation. Plantain leaves, found throughout Europe and North America, were crushed and applied directly to wounds for their antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. Honey, carried by soldiers when possible, served as both food and medicine. Its natural antibacterial properties made it an excellent wound dressing, and unlike many substances, it could be stored for extended periods without spoiling. Soldiers would pack wounds with honey-soaked cloth when available, creating an environment where bacteria struggled to survive while the wound healed. While bullets and shrapnel represented obvious threats, exposure claimed thousands of soldiers through conditions that developed slowly, then struck catastrophically. Trench foot emerged as a devastating epidemic during World War I, where men stood in waterlogged trenches for days or weeks at a time. The constant cold and wet caused tissue to break down, feet to swell grotesquely, and if left untreated, gangrene to set in. Prevention was everything. British soldiers received whale oil to rub into their feet, a thick, greasy substance that created a moisture barrier. This ritual happened daily when conditions allowed, soldiers removing their sodden boots in cramped dugouts to massage the oil into wrinkled white skin before pulling on dry socks if they had them. When frostbite or trench foot set in, treatment required knowledge that contradicted instinct. The overwhelming urge when rewarming frozen flesh was to do it quickly, to plunge frozen feet into hot water or hold them near a fire. But soldiers learned through bitter experience that rapid rewarming caused additional tissue damage. Instead, the affected limb was elevated to prevent swelling, then slowly warmed with wet towels or gentle contact with another soldier's body heat. Cotton wool was carefully placed between digits to prevent them from freezing together as sensation returned. The pain of rewarming was excruciating, described by survivors as worse than the initial injury, but patients saved limbs that haste would have condemned to amputation. Perhaps the most crucial element of battlefield survival wasn't found in any medical kit. It was forged in the human spirit. Pain management without morphine or anesthesia required a psychological resilience that modern civilians struggle to imagine. Soldiers developed techniques to mentally separate themselves from their suffering, focusing on tasks, on memories of home, on anything except the immediate agony. They talked each other through procedures, providing distraction through dark humor or shared remembrance, while one man cleaned another's wound. Rituals and superstitions, dismissed by modern rationalists, actually served crucial psychological purposes. A lucky charm, a prayer, a specific routine before battle. These provided a sense of control in situations of utter chaos. Morale directly impacted survival rates because men with hope fought harder to stay alive, endured pain better, and took the necessary actions to treat themselves when wounded. Standing here in our era of advanced emergency services and modern medicine, it's easy to view these battlefield realities as purely historical curiosities, but crisis can emerge suddenly and overwhelm systems we assume will always function. Understanding improvised medicine isn't about rejecting modern care. It's about possessing knowledge for when modern care isn't accessible. If history teaches us anything, it's that knowledge and adaptability outweigh any equipment. A soldier with minimal supplies but solid training survived, where one with extensive supplies but no knowledge perished. That principle applies equally to modern emergency preparedness, where understanding basic wound care, recognizing infection, managing exposure injuries, and maintaining psychological composure under stress can mean the difference between crisis and catastrophe. If this exploration into the harsh realities of battlefield survival has given you new perspective on human resilience and practical knowledge, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe to The Survival Historian for more deep dives into how our ancestors endured, adapted, and survived against impossible odds, because their hard-won wisdom might just be what we need when our own comfortable certainties fall away. Remember, survival isn't about the gear you carry, it's about the knowledge in your head and the will in your heart. Stay prepared, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next episode.